Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has reiterated Pakistan's willingness to engage in talks with India, particularly on the Kashmir dispute and terrorism, if New Delhi demonstrates sincerity. Speaking at the Pakistan-Turkey-Azerbaijan Trilateral Summit held in Lakan, Azerbaijan, the Prime Minister emphasized that peace in the region depends on dialogue. He called for an amicable resolution to the Kashmir issue in line with United Nations Security Council resolutions and the aspirations of the Kashmiri people.
I have said in all humility that we want peace in the region. Yesterday we wanted peace, today we want peace, and tomorrow we want peace. And that requires talks on the table on issues which need urgent attention and amicable resolution. That is the issue of Kashmir according to the resolutions of United Nations and Security Council and as per the aspirations of the people of Kashmir.
Addressing the summit alongside Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Azerbaijani President İlham Aliyev, PM Shehbaz stated Pakistan is also open to counterterrorism discussions with India. However, he pointed out that Pakistan has already suffered greatly from terrorism, losing 90,000 lives and sustaining $150 billion in economic losses over the decades.
This is a fact of life, my very dear brothers, that we are the biggest victim of terrorism around the globe. We lost 90,000 people, valuable lives of Pakistan, and we have lost $150 billion worth of economic losses over the last many decades.
He further expressed openness to enhancing trade with India, if accompanied by honest cooperation on counterterrorism. All these issues, he said, need to be discussed on the table. The Prime Minister condemned India's recent move to unilaterally hold the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, calling it an attempt to weaponize the agreement. He stressed that the treaty is a lifeline for 240 million Pakistanis and warned that Pakistan is taking measures to ensure its water rights are protected.
Is the water issue. Unfortunately, my very dear brothers, India tried to weaponize Indus Water Treaty, which is a lifeline for the people of Pakistan, 240 million people, for their agriculture use, their own use for drinking purposes, and many other purposes.
PM Shehbaz described the recent escalation with India as an unprovoked act of aggression. He praised Pakistan's military response, lauding Chief of Army Staff Field Marshal Syed Asim Munir for displaying bravery, professionalism, and an unshakable resolve during the crisis. He expressed gratitude to Turkey and Azerbaijan for their unwavering diplomatic support during this period, noting that President Erdogan and President Aliyev stood by Pakistan like impregnable rocks. PM Shehbaz emphasized that Pakistan, Turkey, and Azerbaijan share deep-rooted historical, cultural, and spiritual ties. He said their trilateral partnership would continue to grow and evolve. He referred to their solidarity on global issues, including Karabakh, Kashmir, and northern Turkish Cyprus, as a testament to their unity and mutual respect. The Prime Minister acknowledged the warm reception his delegation received in both Turkey and Azerbaijan. He also highlighted the failure of India to provide credible evidence against Pakistan regarding the incident in Pahalgam and said Pakistan's offer for a neutral, transparent investigation was rejected. During the summit, PM Shehbaz congratulated President Aliyev on Azerbaijan's Republic Day and praised the country's struggle for liberation. He also commended President Erdogan's diplomatic success in addressing the PKK issue.
I would like to congratulate my dear brother President İlham Aliyev and our brothers and sisters in Azerbaijan on your Independence Day. I would also like to, at this point, extend my heartfelt felicitation to my dear brother President Tayyip Erdogan for having very skillfully resolving the issue of PKK.
President Erdogan, in his remarks, offered to mediate between India and Pakistan and welcomed the current ceasefire. He emphasized the importance of solidarity among the three nations and proposed transforming their cooperation into a strategic partnership in areas such as trade, energy, defense, and counterterrorism.
Let me take this opportunity to state that we are pleased with the ceasefire which ended the tension which erupted between Pakistan and India. In the coming period, our foreign ministers will carry out the required work to institutionalize our trilateral cooperation. And they will prepare a strong framework that reflects the common vision of our countries, particularly in the fields that shape our common agenda, such as trade, investments, transportation, energy, defense industry, and the fight against terrorism.
President Aliyev also voiced concern over the Pakistan-India tensions and stressed the need for dialogue based on the UN Charter. He highlighted cooperation potential in technology, education, tourism, and culture, and reaffirmed Azerbaijan's support for both Pakistan and Turkey. The summit concluded with a shared commitment to deepen trilateral ties and pursue peace and prosperity in the region.
The most recent tensions between Pakistan and India had troubled us the most, and we watched it very closely in the hope that peace would prevail. And from the early hours, we've openly expressed our solidarity with brotherly Pakistan. We would like to see that dialogue and negotiations in line with the UN Charter and UN resolutions. This is the way to move forward in this conflict.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that Mohammed Sinwar, a key Hamas chief and the younger brother of the group's leader Yahya Sinwar, has been eliminated. The statement, reported by Reuters, marks a significant development in Israel's ongoing campaign against Hamas. Meanwhile, at a trilateral summit in Laken, Azerbaijan, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan condemned Israel's actions against Palestinians. Speaking alongside leaders of Pakistan and Azerbaijan, Erdogan called for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and demanded the uninterrupted delivery of humanitarian aid to the besieged territory.
We call on the entire world from here to increase pressure on the Israeli administration for establishing permanent ceasefire in Gaza and for taking uninterrupted emergency humanitarian aid into Gaza.
Erdogan described Israel's policies as relentless cruelty and expansionist, and said the international system is drifting into a crisis of legitimacy. He emphasized Turkey's determination to defend innocent lives in Gaza and called on the global community to increase pressure on the Israeli administration.
The clearest example of the crisis of the international system is Israel's relentless cruelty and expansionist policies in Palestine.
Amid escalating tensions, the U.S.-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has reported that aid distribution in Gaza continues without incident. A second distribution site has been opened, with over 14,500 food boxes handed out. Each box provides enough food for 5.5 people over 3.5 days, totaling more than 840,000 meals. However, the United Nations Human Rights Office reports that 47 people were injured by Israeli gunfire while attempting to receive food aid. 𝐃𝐚𝐰𝐬, head of the UN office in the occupied Palestinian territory, confirmed the injuries occurred during aid distribution managed by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The specific locations were not disclosed. Italy's Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani has also weighed in, demanding that Israel halt its military strikes on Gaza. Speaking to Parliament, he warned that the expulsion of Palestinians from the territory is not and never will be an acceptable option. Tajani acknowledged Israel's right to respond to Hamas' October 7 attack, but stressed that the scale of the Israeli response has become tragic and unacceptable. He called for the immediate resumption of humanitarian assistance, the release of hostages held by Hamas, and full respect for international humanitarian law. Tajani also condemned any proposed plans for the forced displacement of Palestinians and expressed support for the Arab plan led by Egypt for Gaza's recovery and reconstruction. On the diplomatic front, France and Indonesia have jointly called for renewed efforts toward a two-state solution. During French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Jakarta, both countries issued a statement promoting mutual recognition between Israel and Palestine. Macron reaffirmed France's commitment to a two-state solution and announced a joint conference with Saudi Arabia in New York to revive the peace process. Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto stated that Indonesia would be willing to recognize Israel only if it also recognizes a Palestinian state. He emphasized that this is the only path to lasting peace.
Indonesia sudah menyampaikan Begitu negara Palestina diakui oleh Israel, Indonesia siap untuk mengakui Israel dan kita siap untuk membuka hubungan diplomatik dengan Israel.
Finally, Pope Leo has issued a heartfelt plea for a ceasefire in Gaza. Speaking from St. Peter's Square, the pontiff urged both Israel and Hamas to respect international humanitarian law. He lamented the ongoing suffering in Gaza, highlighting the cries of parents mourning their dead children. These global responses reflect growing calls for restraint, peace, and accountability in the region. President Vladimir Putin's demands for ending the war in Ukraine include a written pledge from Western powers to halt NATO expansion eastward and to lift a portion of the sanctions on Russia, according to 3 Russian sources familiar with the negotiations. Reuters has reported that following a 2-hour conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump last week, Putin agreed to work on a memorandum with Ukraine outlining the framework for peace and ceasefire timing. Russia is currently drafting its version. However, Ukraine and European governments accuse Moscow of stalling while Russian forces gain ground. The sources say Putin's conditions include a ban on NATO membership for Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and other former Soviet republics, Ukrainian neutrality, partial sanctions relief, resolution of frozen Russian assets, and protections for Russian speakers in Ukraine. One source warned that if Putin can't achieve peace on his terms, he'll aim for more military victories. Another added that Putin has toughened his stance, particularly on securing full control of 4 Ukrainian regions Russia claims. Russia currently occupies nearly 1/5 of Ukraine. Despite rising costs and casualties, the Kremlin believes it can sustain the war for years. Trump, frustrated with Putin, recently said the Russian leader was playing with fire and hinted at more sanctions if peace talks stall. Ukraine insists that Russia must not have veto power over its NATO ambitions. NATO says it will not change its open-door policy due to Moscow's demands. Putin has repeatedly stated that any peace must address the conflict's root causes, which, according to Moscow, include NATO's expansion. Russia wants assurances in writing, citing verbal promises made in the 1990s.